Alex, is the Job Guide 360 interview guide worth it?
Honestly, yes, the guide is highly insightful. I recommend it to everyone.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are really going to pull back the curtain on a hugely important role in finance. The Chief Investment Officer, or CIO. Our goal here is to get past the job title itself. We want to understand the specific technical skills needed, and maybe most interestingly, how big organizations actually use templates to evaluate and pick the person managing, well, potentially billions.
Yeah, and what's really useful for this dive is where our information comes from. It's not just some generic description. It's directly from a hiring platform, Ava HR. They provide detailed guides, templates, even a scorecard. So we get a peek at the interviewer's playbook, really. See what they actually look for.
Exactly. It's a fantastic window into how institutions think. And when we talk about the CIO, we're defining essentially the chief financial architect. This is a very senior executive, and they have two massive jobs, right? First, create the whole investment philosophy, the strategy for the entire organization. And second, manage that portfolio day in, day out. They're the main guardian, you could say, of the institution's capital. Okay, so let's unpack that foundation, the template. What does it say about the basic background? We know it's senior, but what are the absolute must-haves?
Well, the guide is pretty clear on that. You need at least a bachelor's degree, usually in fields like, finance, accounting, business, economics. That makes sense. And crucially, significant prior experience. We're talking senior investment management roles, handling high stakes. This isn't an entry-level path.
Right, makes sense. That's the baseline.
That's just getting in the door. The actual job, the day-to-day duties are really complex. The template lists things like developing and implementing investment strategies, but also constantly adjusting them, overseeing all sorts of assets, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, you name it. And critically, always monitoring performance, analyzing market trends, trying to spot the next big opportunity.
And here's what seems like the core tension, the real tightrope walk in the job description. The main duty is managing the portfolio to, and I'm quoting here, maximize return while minimizing risk. That almost sounds like a contradiction, doesn't it? Like hitting the gas and the brakes simultaneously.
It is the ultimate balancing act, and that's precisely why the role is so specialized and why the interview questions get so specific later on. They're trying to figure out a candidate's philosophy. Are they fundamentally a defender, someone whose main goal is avoiding loss? Or are they an accelerator, willing to take calculated risks for bigger gains? A great CIO needs to be both. Fluent in both approaches.
So to actually do that, to manage that contradiction, you need more than just general finance knowledge. What specific technical tools does this Ava HR template say a CIO absolutely has to master?
This is where it gets really technical. Beyond just understanding markets and trends, which is a given, they absolutely have to stay on top of regulations. Think about shifts in global banking rules or new domestic reporting requirements. These things constantly change the playing field for profitability and risk. It's not static.
Okay, regulations, got it. What else?
But here's the really crucial technical piece the document highlights: deep knowledge of complex financial instruments. Specifically, it mentions derivatives, options, and swaps. And these aren't just buzzwords. They're the core tools for sophisticated risk management at an institutional level.
Okay, let's pause on that for a second, because for listeners maybe familiar with basic stocks and bonds, why is mastering something like a swap so critical for a CIO? Isn't that just, kind of speculative trading?
That's a really common misconception, and it highlights the difference between individual investing and managing institutional money. For a huge entity like a pension fund or a university endowment, these instruments often aren't for speculation. They're primarily for hedging, very precise hedging. A swap, for example, might let an organization with massive long-term debt effectively trade a variable interest rate for a fixed one. That shields the entire portfolio from huge swings in interest rates. It's protection. Or options, they let the institution lock in a price to buy or sell something later. It's like insurance against a sudden market crash. So the CIO needs to know exactly how to use these complex tools to defend against systemic risks, currency swings, commodity prices, you name it.
That totally reframes it. It's strategic defense, not just placing bets.
Yeah.
So if the job needs this incredibly deep, specialized knowledge, how do organizations make sure they pick the right person? The one who can balance the tech skills with the big picture strategy.
And that brings us right to the interviewer side of the table. The source material really stresses how important preparation is not just for the candidate, but for the hiring committee itself. If the interviewers haven't done their homework, their questions will just scratch the surface. They won't really be able to tell if someone truly understands derivatives or just read the Wikipedia page, Good targeted questions let the applicant actually demonstrate their real skills and how they think.
And, as the source points out, good preparation signals something to the candidate too, right? Top CIOs want to see a serious professional hiring process. It makes sense. So the hiring guide provides this candidate scorecard template. It's basically the checklist for evaluation. And it's a really interesting mix of hard skills and softer factors.
That mix is absolutely vital. The scorecard covers the objective stuff first. Educational background, check. Prior work experience, check. And then those core qualifications experience, that's where they're verifying the technical mastery. We just talked about the derivatives, the swaps.
But then it shifts, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. It moves into areas that feel more strategic, maybe even cultural. Things like problem-solving abilities, communication, and that includes team building, and then these two big ones, organizational fit and directional fit.
Yeah, and let's be clear about those two fits because they sound similar, but they're actually quite different, and both are critical for a CIO hire. Organizational fit is basically about culture and teamwork. Do they mesh with the existing leadership? Do their values align with the institution's mission? Can they manage the team effectively?
So organizational fit is like, can you work well within our current system?
Exactly. Directional fit, though, that's much more about the future. It asks, does this candidate's personal career ambition, their 5-year plan, line up with where the board wants the institution to be in 10 years? For instance, if the organization is making a huge push into sustainable investing, but the candidate's entire track record is in, say, oil and gas futures, they might be technically brilliant, but lack the right directional fit for where the firm is heading. Millions in strategy can hinge on getting that alignment right.
That makes a huge amount of sense.
Yeah.
So with that scorecard framework in mind, let's look at the actual interview questions the template suggests. We've kind of grouped them thematically to see what the interviewer's really trying to assess. First up, we have subsection A, market acumen and experience. These seem like foundational checks. They ask things like, what experience do you have in the financial industry? Pretty straightforward. Then, how would you rate your understanding of the current market and economic trends? And how do you stay current?
Right, and notice the nuance there. They don't just ask if you understand the market. Asking how would you rate your understanding tests self-awareness, confidence, maybe even a bit of humility. And asking how you stay current is key. They want to know your process for continuous learning. Are you actively seeking out cutting-edge analysis daily? Or just relying on past knowledge? They need someone proactive.
Okay, so if the candidate clears that market knowledge hurdle, the next logical place to go is execution. Can they actually make sound decisions? This brings us to subsection B, strategy and risk management. This feels like the core competency test. The questions here are, what strategies do you employ to ensure profitability? Can you provide examples of successful investment decisions? And what strategies or methods do you use when analyzing risk?
These are crucial. They move from theory to practice. Asking for specific examples of success, they want proof. They want to hear about times you were tested, maybe even made mistakes, but learned and succeeded. It shows you've actually done the job under pressure. And the answer should show a clear, repeatable process, not just, oh, I got lucky on that one. Detailing the risk analysis methods is especially important. It confirms the candidate isn't just a gambler, but has a disciplined system for protecting capital, which goes back to that core mandate, right? Minimize risk.
That systematic approach again. Absolutely. Okay, moving on. The third group focuses on the future. Subsection C, innovation, compliance, and tools. This is about whether the CIO is ready for what's next. The questions. Do you have experience developing innovative investment strategies or products? Then, are you familiar with regulatory compliance issues? And what type of technology do you use to support your investment decisions?
This cluster is really about future-proofing the role and the organization. Compliance knowledge is non-negotiable. It keeps the institution safe, legally and financially. A CIO must be deeply aware of shifting regulations globally. But let's zoom in on that technology question. It's not just asking if you know how to use standard tools like Bloomberg or Excel. It's digging deeper.
Deeper how? What kind of advanced tools are relevant here?
We're likely talking about sophisticated risk modeling software, maybe platforms that use AI or machine learning to spot subtle market patterns humans might miss. Advanced portfolio optimization systems that can run thousands of what-if scenarios almost instantly. A top CIO today needs to be comfortable with, and probably an advocate for, using technology to gain a real competitive edge. Making faster, smarter decisions in volatile markets often depends on it. Innovation and tech are tightly linked here.
Got it. Technology is a strategic lever.
Yeah.
Okay, finally, we circle back to the people side, connecting to those scorecard elements like communication and team building. There's one key leadership question, subsection D, leadership and team management. It asks, how would you motivate a team to stay focused on achieving long-term goals while meeting short-term objectives?
And that question just perfectly captures the essential tension, the sort of cognitive dissonance of the CIO role, doesn't it?
Right.
You're constantly dealing with short-term market noise, the pressure for quarterly results, while also needing to maintain discipline for a long-term strategy that might take 5-10 years to fully pay off. Leading a team through that requires incredible skill. How do you keep morale high and focused on the long game when maybe a key long-term asset is underperforming this quarter? It demands extraordinary communication and real strategic clarity.
Yeah, it's definitely more than just finance. It's psychology under intense pressure.
Yeah.
So this whole deep dive using the AV HR materials really gives us a clearer picture. The CIO role, fundamentally, it's this constant high-wire balancing act. You need that deep, specialized technical knowledge, derivatives, regulations, but also the strategic leadership to guide a team through those competing short-term and long-term pressures.
Precisely. They need to be the sharpest technical mind in the room and the leader who can articulate the vision to the board and inspire the analysts doing the day-to-day work. Understanding the CIO really means understanding that critical point where hard finance meets organizational strategy, risk management, and long-term survival.
It's been fascinating getting this kind of inside look at how these crucial roles are evaluated at the highest levels of finance.
Absolutely. And building on that scorecard, particularly those two categories we discussed, organizational fit and directional fit, here's something for you, the listener, to think about. Given how incredibly demanding the technical skills are for a CIO, how much does the final hiring decision really depend on proven technical competence versus that perceived alignment? That synergy between the candidate's own ambitions and where the organization sees itself going. Is it mostly about skill, or is that fit the ultimate deciding factor? Something to chew on until our next